Greetings to everyone. Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, and a warm welcome to our meeting focusing on workforce related across the globe. We are waiting for a few more minutes for people to join the room. And we are thankful for your time allocated for this meeting, and we hope that it will be very meaningful time spent with us. I'm Mihaela Ionescu. I'm the Program Director in ISSA, the International Step-by-Step Association, the Regional Network for Europe and Central Asia, and I'm honored to host this and moderate the discussion that will happen today. We call it a global dialogue, and we are very glad that we have managed to bring in the discussion stakeholders that are representing various levels in the early childhood system, from country to regional and global level, and that is something that we have dreamt to achieve a lot in the initiative that we ran for many years. The panel discussion will focus primarily on professionalization, the workforce well-being, and to what extent we managed to produce systemic changes. Next slide. For those of you that you might have not heard about the initiative, it has a long term. It started in 2016, and I'm glad that from those that have signed up for the meeting, that were among the ones that at the very beginning contributed to creating the initiative as a partnership between ISSA and our colleagues at Results for Development. We aim to strengthen the policies and the country strategies around enhancing the skills, the preparation, the training, and the employment conditions of those that are working with young children. We talk about early childhood workforce, meaning all professionals across sectors that are involved in policies and services delivered to children and their families. In 2023, we've been very happy to get on board the other peers from the regional networks across other continents. The Arab Network for Early Childhood Development, the Asia Pacific Regional Network for Early Childhood, and the African Early Childhood Network. Thus, the consortium became stronger, but also had global coverage, and with the focus of having a more regional and country view on how the workforce is faring in terms of the policies and the measures that are supporting them. Next slide, please. Since we are more than 10 years that we are involved in the initiative, perhaps it would be useful if you just take a look at the website, because over these years, one of the key outcomes of the initiative has been that it really created a strong body of knowledge for and about the early childhood workforce across sectors. There are a lot of tools that we have created, and the landscape analysis, so lots of information, lots of knowledge that was driving recommendations for policies across continents and at country level, as well as a knowledge hub where you can filter by the topic or the sector what type of information or studies you would like to, policies. There is really a wealth of resources that is included in the knowledge hub. So please sign up to this to the net newsletter in case you would want to learn more about what's happening in the initiative. Next slide. As I was mentioning, it's a long-term initiative, but in 2023, all the 4 networks from the 4 continents came together and developed a theory of change for the next periods, for the next 4 years. With support from the regional networks, Early Childhood Regional Networks Fund, we've gathered and we mapped out what are the regional priorities that would guide our work and what actually we would like to achieve further within the initiative. As you can see, it's quite a complex, like all theories of change are. But what was more important, it was that we established what are going to be our pillars of action. And you can see from building and sharing knowledge and evidence to advocating for the early childhood workforce, support the country capacity building and implementation, as well as facilitate the collaborative learning across countries, within countries, across countries, and across regions. At the same time, you could see what are outcomes that we have looked for. It would have been difficult to achieve in a short time all those outcomes, but they have been they have given us our direction of travel and intentionality in the way that we work together, or we worked at the regional and country level. Some of the outcomes that are listed here, either at the country or regional or cross-regional level, have been achieved. And there's much more work that has to be done, obviously. Next slide, please. And in this context, we are going to share with you how much of the work that we've carried out from 2023 to 2024 has contributed to the achievement of those outcomes. Most important, it was that when we started the work in 2023, we had to prioritize on which category of workforce we are going to focus, because it's a very broad landscape of types of professionals working in early years. And we decided that the focus will be early childhood education and care staff. And there were two topics that emerged from all four regions. And we had coupled two regions around specific topics. One was the mental health and well-being of the early childhood education and care staff. And the second one was professionalization and professional development of the early childhood education and care staff. For the first one, ISSA and the Asia Pacific Regional Network focused on, and on the second one was the Arab Network and the African one. Well, the topics have on those two topics, there have been lots of levels, let's say, of action at the regional level. So there have been activities that have mobilized the members of the networks represented in the initiative, but there's been a lot of country implementation as well as cross-regional learning. Cross-country and cross-regional learning. So depending on the topic and the priority that the regional network established, the activities focused either on the building evidence to advocate for specific policy changes and measures impacting the early childhood education and care staff, or there has been advocacy or initiatives at the country level, or there have been capacity building as well as influencing policies and cross-country and regional learning events. Next slide, please. Within this broader framework, today, this was one of our ambitions to start bringing stakeholders from the different levels in the system together in a dialogue. We are going to discuss only parts and share some of the things that have happened, but it's not just about that. It's about how much we managed to achieve and how such a platform, like such a global initiative, can align and bring together efforts that are happening in different regions to create a narrative that is convincing and drives the policy making that is favoring the support and well-being of the workforce, as well as bringing more recognition and strengthening the reputation of this category of workforce, usually and too often neglected. So we are going to look at what has been achieved and across the regions through this collaboration, and of course to think what are the workforce-related needs that are still remaining and are emerging, but also to look forward. How can such an initiative that provides a platform for collaboration and not only knowledge creation, but also country-level changes can be taken forward? Next slide, please. So for today, we have two panel discussions, and one will bring together representatives of the regional networks and from members of organizations or member representatives of those regions that will speak on behalf of countries. And we will, you see, we have quite a list of speakers. We will address two questions. What workforce priorities have been addressed in this phase of the initiative at the regional level? And what has been achieved across the region at country level. And we will have representatives from all four networks talking. In the second panel discussion, next slide, please, We will talk what are the workforce-related priorities are emerging from the regions represented today, and how such a workforce cross-regional initiative can become a powerful platform for driving further cross-regional cooperation and learning and inform effective system-level changes. And we will have representatives from international organizations that are working at the regional or at the global level, and also we'll have one representative from the donors group. Since time is precious, I will already invite colleagues that are in the first panel to join me in the discussion, and we will focus on the first questions. We will have time for questions and answers from your end after the first panel, and you can certainly continue to look at, to provide those questions in the chat section. We thank to those that have sent their questions in advance, and we hope that we will be able to address them during our discussions. And we hope to keep you engaged and stay with us until the very end, where we will also interact with all of you, proposing you a few questions in our Mentimeter. So let's start with the first panel discussion. I'm very honored to have all colleagues from the 4 regional networks with us to address the first 2 important questions. What regional workforce priorities have been addressed in this phase, and how actually they have been implemented and reached out to country level? What was the impact that was created there? I was mentioning that we have networks that addressed the same topic, but we will start with the first one that is related to the workforce well-being, social emotional skills, and staff workforce well-being. So I will invite first my colleague Zorica Trikic from ISSA. We will start with our regional network, and I will invite Zorica Trikic, the Senior Program Manager in ISSA, since she's been the one that led all the implementation on our side, what have been the priorities that we've addressed, and to summarize actually what has happened in this 1 year. I know the time is very short, but just to give an idea of what has been happening in this initiative in this past 1.5 years.
Why me first? Okay, I'm really honored to start this story, because Early Childhood Workforce Initiative is an initiative that is my passion. And in the past few years, when we joined forces with other regional networks, it really created the space to create a global movement around early childhood workforce, and also to connect, as you said, global to country level. And I'm going to talk about ISSA region. And over the past few years, as you all know, we had, our region was impacted by COVID, by huge migrations, and the war in Ukraine. And all these events brought mental health of children, caregivers, but also early childhood workforce, early childhood professionals to the forefront. Alongside this, long-standing inequities based on prejudices, social inclusion have been intensified. And we are here today because we really deeply believe that early childhood professionals are the backbone of strong and inclusive systems. But yet, too often, they work without the training, without any kind of systemic support needed to respond to challenges like trauma, discrimination, and any kind of adversity. Their well-being is overlooked in most of the cases, at least that's our experience, which leaves them vulnerable to stress and burnout. And ultimately, this is affecting the quality of services that they are able to provide to children and families. Through our work with members, in the region, we discovered the pressing competence gap in the early childhood workforce around these issues. So we also saw that it's urgent to act. As a network with the long-standing and deep expertise in early childhood development and high-quality early childhood education and care, we started to build on our experience on supporting practitioners and policymakers. So we knew that we are more than well positioned to drive the change, not just on individual level, but also on systemic level. We realized that mental health and equity must become integral part of how we prepare and support the workforce. This is not about what is usually happening, one-off workshops. It's about embedding these priorities into pre-service and in-service training, institutional practices, and also national frameworks. Through the Early Childhood Workforce Initiative, as Michaela said, which was launched together by ISSA and ANECD, we have worked to bring this vision to life. A key part of our effort has been to implement two programs: psychological first aid and trauma-informed practices, and embracing diversity. The first program equips professionals to support children and families facing trauma, displacement, and adversity, while also putting a lot of stress on safeguarding the well-being of the workforce. This program has been successfully implemented and adapted and accredited, which means officially recognized by ministries of education in several countries across our region. Embracing diversity is a little bit different because it helps professionals challenge discrimination, foster inclusion, and create bias-free environments, ensuring that every child, but also every single professional, regardless of their background, has equal opportunities to thrive. Together, these programs move us beyond individual capacity building. They help strengthen the structures that support professional growth and, what is the most important, resilience of the workforce. And what we did under this project as a network, we have trained more than 300 master trainers in 21 countries, reaching over 14,000 professionals. In many places, our members, as I mentioned, gone further, embedding this content into pre-service and in-service programs, creating lasting impact. Our work is not only transforming day-to-day practice, it is reshaping the policies and strategies that define early childhood systems. Because as we all know, when we invest in the workforce, we invest in children, families, and communities, and create something, let's call it like bottom-up change of the dominant narrative. With that, I would like to say thank you for listening to me. I wrote some bullet points because I could talk 2 hours, but Michaela is looking at me. I'm honored at this moment to give floor to my colleague, Gulbadan Zakayeva. She is coming from the front line, and she's going to share with us how they're advancing this work locally and helping to build stronger, more resilient early childhood workforce in Kazakhstan. Thank you.
Thank you, Zorica. Hello, everybody. I'm Gulbadan Zakayeva from Kazakhstan. I'm a director of Community Educational Foundation School for All in Kazakhstan. As Zorika said, I would like to share with our experience on integration, psychological first aid content into pre and in-service training for early childhood education and care professionals in Kazakhstan. After PFA training conducted by ISSA, we started thinking about how we can convey this knowledge to our ECD professionals as we understood how it is important for both new and existing professionals to provide psychosocial support for children, their parents, and caregivers in emergency and humanitarian situations. We discussed with our partner Abay University how to implement this initiative and how to include the PFA topics into the context of early childhood education of our country. As the educational program of Teacher Training Institutes of the Republic of Kazakhstan does not provide for a special course and PFA training for teachers and students. Abay University, as a leading national pedagogical institute, proposed to conduct a foundational training for all pedagogical university teachers. During the meeting, we also discussed how to promote the integration of PFA content into pre and in-service training program. Then we created a project that included training of trainers and adaptation and translation of materials into Kazakh. This initiative was supported by ISSA, and we started our activities by adapting and translating training materials, PowerPoint presentations, videos, and other additional materials into Kazakh. At the same time, we negotiated with pedagogical universities across the country, and in order to identify training participants, we focused on experienced trainers, teachers who are interested in developing of this idea and who are ready to support us and collaborate with us. In June of 2024, we conducted 2-3 days online training of trainers, which were attended by 77 educators from all regions of the Republic of Kazakhstan. The participants were teachers of Teacher Training, Retraining Institute, early years practitioners, psychologists, and professionals of the Department of Education. The main objective of the training was to fill a critical knowledge and skills gap in the early childhood workforce capacity, how to protect, interact, communication with, and support young children and their families who experience traumatic situations. The training participants showed great interest. For them, it was very important that the training combines theory with practice and has a full package of materials in Kazakh. The availability of materials and all necessary resources in Kazakh served as one of the important points during our negotiations with teacher training institutes on integration of PFA content into pre-service training curriculum of early childhood education. We received great support from our partners, Abay University and other universities, which stated that the training materials will be officially implemented into the program for students and master students and integrated into the educational program as part of the major course Innovations in Early Childhood and Primary Education. We are proud that we have prepared a team of trainers who will continue our initiative and disseminate of the project's outcomes within their institution and beyond through organizing conferences, seminars, courses, and webinars for early childhood practitioners, caregivers, parents, and students. We believe that a team of trainers will foster the creation of professional communities as a platform for exchanging practice, experience, and learning at the regional level.
Thank you
Thank
so
you.
much. Yes, thank you so much, Gulbadan. I think that colleagues have already kind of understood the snowball effect of the work that has been carried out at the regional level and how powerful it is to have such a knowledge and expertise infrastructure that is allowing for changes that are emerging from real needs that have been learned from the workforce to influence their preparation and feeling more confident and protected in the way that they are performing their professional role. I think I will see if there are other questions that will come our way as we progress with the presentations. But I wanted to emphasize the most important connection between the regional and the country level. And this is just one example of what has happened on how we have empowered such kind of changes, because we know these are the lasting ones. Embedding in the curriculum of in-service and pre-service training is one of the ways in which we can be sure that such type of needs are met through relevant preparation that is provided through both types of service provision. We are going to move to the other region now at our colleagues in Asia Pacific, ARNEC, and we are going to invite Evelyn Santiago, the Executive Director of the network, and the two other colleagues that will come from Philippines, Dr. Melissa Bartolome and April Anun Kurugan, both of them working at the Philippine Normal University, to again showcase how at the regional level the efforts have been mobilized and how they have impacted the efforts at the country level to produce changes that will last. Evelyn, the floor is to you.
Thank you, Mihaela. Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, everyone. I'm proud to share with you the accomplishments that we've had under this project. But before that, I would really like to express, our gratitude to ISSA and Africa Network and the Arab Network, because this is such a fantastic, collaboration that really happened, amongst the four networks, of course, with the support of the EC Regional Network Fund. Next slide, Shiva. So I think Mihaela already, mentioned that for ARNEC, the focus of this initiative is really on building the capacity or competency of the ECCE teachers on social and emotional learning, recognizing that this is a critical, component of teaching and learning in support of the holistic development of young children. And so with this overall objective, we have undertaken four major initiatives, strategies. First is that we had a regional training of trainers on SEL using the handbook that we have developed with UNESCO, and we had trained 21 master trainers from 7 countries. You can see in the slide, from which countries these trainers come from. Building on that regional training of trainers, we also established a regional learning community with the objective of furthering the collaboration and providing support, cross-country collaboration as they begin to implement, SEL integration in their respective countries. And then we also did map out the ECCE workforce priorities and SEL needs across 6 countries. Again, recognizing that SEL is just one of the many challenges that ECD workforce is facing. And so we try to map out those different issues affecting their development and their well-being. And outputs, from the results of the mapping, we have packaged into a policy and advocacy brief, which we will be sharing as we advocate, in the region and even globally and at the national level for the development of the ECD workforce. So these are the major four activities. Next slide, please. One of the major strategies, that we have implemented in this project is really the engagement of the countries through our excellent partners from countries such as the Philippines, Sri Lanka, Bangladesh, and Malaysia. So in the Philippines, you will hear later from our colleagues from the Philippine Normal University, but they were able to integrate SEL into their teacher training programs and into their curriculum. And it has impacted over 1,000 educators, in a short, span of time. In Sri Lanka, we facilitated a national training of trainers on SEL together with UNESCO and in partnership with UNICEF Sri Lanka and the Ministry of Education. And now, they're integrating it with their national early childhood education curriculum framework. In Bangladesh, in partnership with BRAC, they were able to integrate SEL and mental health into their play labs with their trained play leaders and para counselors, and they have been advocating with the government, in terms of integrating SEL, especially in humanitarian setting. And in Malaysia, we have partnered with the ECCE Council of Malaysia, and they have undertaken a nationwide, series of workshops reaching 500 plus educators, again, to scale the SEL implementation. These are, some of the major, activities, engagements that we've had with the countries. Next slide, please. In summary, I am proud, to share with you that we have trained 21, master trainers in the region, again, using the SEL handbook. And in the 7 countries that I mentioned earlier, we have a regional learning community with 50 plus stakeholders joining that. We have 53 master trainers in Sri Lanka, helping the country to integrate, into their national ECE curriculum. In Malaysia, 500 educators, again, have been trained. In Philippines, 1,000 plus educators. We have mapped out ECC priorities in the 6 countries, leading into the policy and advocacy brief. Next, please. All of these things would have not been, possible if we were not able to partner with our, with the countries and also partners from the region such as UNESCO and UNICEF, as well. It is really about relationships and strategic partnerships with the countries that allowed us to make system level changes, such as the integration of SEL into teachers training programs and curriculum. And so scaling up, and sustaining impact really lies on the partnerships which we want to enhance on and to strengthen, in support of the early childhood development workforce. I'll stop here. I'll give the floor to our colleagues and our partners from the Philippine Normal University to provide you, with some details on how they were able, to integrate SEL, in their programs. Melissa and April, please.
Thank you, Evelyn. Good morning, good afternoon, and good evening here in the Philippines. So I'm Melissa, and together with me is April. We are teaching at Philippine Normal University, and our university is the National Center for Teacher Education in our country. So we are both serving professional development programs for in-service or those who are teaching in the field, and while we are nourishing the pre-service teachers or those who are in our undergraduate program. So next slide, please. Some of the milestones that we have achieved so far since the two of us, April and I, were part of the 21 regional master trainers that Evelyn have presented a while ago. So luckily we're part of it, and the milestones that we have achieved after the regional training, first is that we have integrated the cell topics and lessons in our BSED, Bachelor of Early Childhood Education program, which will be implemented this school year. So it's already been approved by our Board of Regents. And while we are waiting for this approval, we conducted some short training program for our undergraduate pre-service teachers so they can also have these cell competencies. And this was made possible by the Memorandum of Understanding between PNU and ARNEC for this cell initiative. And we are grateful for this early childhood workshop initiative because we have this resources to conduct this training. Another milestone is that we have conducted in-service training programs on different partner schools in Manila, different public schools in Manila, and we are targeting more schools. So we have ongoing preparation for more in-service training program on cell and different partner schools. And with this, we also have other faculty members of PNU to join us in these training programs. And with this both pre-service and in-service teachers, we have a research on this and hopefully to be published hopefully this year after writing it. And the current that we are doing now is that we had partnership with the Department of Education, the one in charge with our basic education. So we have partnership with DepEd, wherein under the alternative delivery mode, we are integrating cell across different grade levels and across different subject areas. So hopefully it will be successful because we are done with the training session guides for the training of trainers. And we also have the materials. We already developed materials. And if it is approved, by the second half of the year, we are going to start the regional training of trainers. This is across the country, different public schools from different regions in the Philippines. And the next slide, please. Okay, this is sample pictures of the trainings that we have conducted. As much as we want to post pictures, there will be limited time for us to present. Next slide, please. Okay, April.
Okay, thank you very much. So just to continue, we would like to also highlight the opportunities that we have been given in terms of this cell integration. So the first one is we would like to expand the implementation of the cell programs in the Philippines. So we are continuously trying to connect to other schools so that we can have an expanded implementation of cell, not only for the schools, public schools, but we are also trying to connect with the child development centers for those centers catering to 4 years below. So we would also like to train these child development teachers and child development workers. Another is to conduct and publish research on cell. So we already have some data. We use the instrument provided in the app itself. So hopefully we would be able also to do a write-up on that. We also would like to conduct training of trainers on integrating cells. Specifically, first and foremost, we have 4 other branches of PNU across the nation, across our country. So we are planning to have a training of trainers for our campuses, and then after that to other normal schools that we are that PNU is a partner with. So we are also targeting that, and also to grow the community of learners advocating for cell. So we are very happy that in PNU, a lot of our faculty members have signified their interest in joining our advocacy and also our training on cell, and we are hoping that they will also be a part of this community of learners. So hopefully we will be able to expand the implementation of cell throughout the year. Thank you very much.
Thank you also to all 3 of you. I think this has been another important showcase of how a network can mobilize effective changes at country level. I think what we want to underline is that the architecture of the intervention shows how strategic partnerships are important in mobilizing such type of changes, involving institutions that have to be relevant for the workforce, and at the same time, how we are looking at all levels of the system. Changing individuals is not enough. Creating the environment and where they can perform at their best, that's the place where we are also working. So how we can work at the institutional level, how we can work at the ministry level, at the government level, how we can look at the environment in which the countries are supporting the workforce. That's the part that we have tried through this strategic partnership to create. And the snowball effect that we are just witnessing by listening to both regions, it's, I think, very clear, and it shows the potential that exists there to create meaningful and sustainable changes, because I think that's what we all want to see, changes that matter and changes that stay in the system. Well, with this presentation, we're going to move now to the next two networks. As I was mentioning at the beginning, with great thanks to colleagues from both ISSA and ARNEC networks, we are going to move to the other two networks that have focused on another topic, and that was about professionalization and professional development of early childhood education and care staff. As these were elected as priorities for both regions, now we are going to invite them to show how they have, at the regional and country level, managed to create significant steps ahead in building evidence and advocating for what is essential for quality early childhood education and care service, and that is the professionalization and professional support for early childhood education staff. I'm going to give the floor first to our colleagues at African Network, and I will invite Given, the regional coordinator at the regional network, and then the colleague from the country level in Gambia, Lamin Jo. So Given, the floor is yours.
Thank you, Hela. And first of all, I just want to express my gratitude for the opportunity to participate in this webinar and to share some of the work that we've done. And listening to colleagues, I think it's very important to kind of start off by building the context for Africa, in which, and the reason why our priority was on building the evidence that would contribute or lead to the professionalization of the early learning workforce in our region. Africa is a young continent. We do have a growing population of young children. We are faced with a severe shortage of the workforce, of the early learning workforce, because early learning or early childhood education is a relatively late add-on to our educational system. And there is an urgent need for a strategy to deal with the supply and demand for the workforce to meet the growing population of young children. So with more countries taking on ECE as part of their education strategies, there was a felt need to address workforce needs that will match the expansion of ECE and also to meet the need for quality early learning programs, particularly also strengthening skills of the workforce in the delivery of play-based curriculum. So what was the issue for us in the region was the inadequate availability of data on the early learning workforce, which compromised workforce planning, teacher development, and the overall professionalization of this workforce. The lack of data has been one of the most challenging issues, which is preventing effective workforce planning and development in our region. So under this initiative, under the ECWI initiative, the Africa region, we decided to prioritize evidence generation so that we can understand the issues that face this workforce, so that we can understand the identification of barriers to workforce development and also highlight some of the specific policy actions that are needed to enhance the professionalization of this workforce. Coming from that background, therefore, we did do the early learning workforce landscape analysis was done, and also zeroed in one country where a workforce diagnostics was done in the Gambia. And we have Mr. Jobe here who will be able to provide a little bit more detail on that. So in terms of what came out of it, the landscape analysis has provided our region with the regional perspectives on the status of the workforce in Africa. And it has also helped to identify some of the systemic barriers to the professionalization of this cadre. So from this evidence that has been generated, there's a need to look into multiple interrelated systems. So issues around the recruitment of teachers, issues around retention, teacher preparation systems, support systems amidst a sector that is structured in terms of the multiple systems within the same system. In other words, we have private provision, community provision, government provision. The evidence that has been generated really has provided key lessons. And one of the key takeaway lessons is that the ecosystem and holistic workforce approach is required to address this issue of the professionalization of the early learning workforce. And therefore, there is now advocacy that human resource development should be part of the education sector strategic plans in the African context, so that we have a much more holistic approach to addressing the issue of teacher development and also professionalization of this workforce. To highlight the contribution of ECWI is that ECWI has contributed to the evidence and the region's understanding of the critical context-specific issues of the workforce. We have developed ECD advocacy and policy briefs, which are being used to advocate for greater attention and more investment in the issue of workforce development. And this evidence has equipped key stakeholders for in-country and regional advocacy and policy engagement on the issues of the early learning workforce. So we have used multiple platforms at the regional level, at the continental level, have been used to make this evidence more visible and also to advocate and engage in policy dialogue. So there has been dissemination of this through several advocacy platforms, the East African Conference, the Southern African Conference, the Western African ECD Network Forum, and also through the advocacy and policy dialogue platforms existing under the African Union ISSA framework, such as the teacher development cluster, which is part of the African Union structures. We have also equipped the early childhood development networks in West Africa with not only the information, but the advocacy skills. As you know, our ECD networks are the national advocacy partners on the use of this evidence for strengthening in-country advocacy and policy engagement. Finally, I also just want to mention that in our region, we are just at the start of a new African Union continental education strategy for Africa, and we did provide input into this based on the evidence that has been generated, but also forward-looking. The new Africa Union Continental Education Strategy for Africa provides an emerging opportunity for concrete action, which is informed by the evidence generated under ECWI. So as we launch and roll out the new continental strategy, certainly the evidence from ECWI will inform concrete action as we address the issue of teacher professionalization on our continent. So at this point, I just want to pass it over to Mr. Lamin Jobe, who will also share on the work that was done in the Gambia at the country level in terms of the diagnostics of the early learning workforce. Lamin, over to you. Thank you.
Thank you, Given, and good morning to everyone from the smiling coast of the Gambia. Like Given rightly said, I work for the Ministry of Basic and Secondary Education in the Gambia, and I also take part in the National Early Childhood Development Network as well as its Secretary General. So you realize that I am doing a double role, both on advocacy and that of as well an insider with the Ministry of Basic and Secondary Education. Like she said, we are very much grateful and thankful to AfECN for providing us with the support last year for the diagnostic workshop which was conducted in the Gambia in February. And this diagnostic was really very much relevant. The ECE landscape in the Gambia, because in the Gambia, we have almost about 60, for instance, 60% is in the private hands and 40% is that of the government. So you realize that private sector contribution towards ECE education in the Gambia obviously is very high. And then government try to also take part at the level of 40%. And one of the striking things we try to do now as a ministry and as a government is, from the diagnostic, we were able to present a policy and advocacy brief to the Ministry of Basic and Secondary Education, to the policymakers. And we try to obviously push these with them. And one of the greatest things we are able to see coming out this last January is at least a 30% pay rise across the board for all the civil servants. And this was obviously one of the things that really came out from the diagnostic, that in the Gambia, the ECE workforce obviously at some point was even not recognized by the government. And the interesting thing is they are all trained by the same teacher development institution, which is the Gambia College. The other levels of teachers are being absorbed and employed by the government, and the ECE or the ECD teachers are not obviously. And then with this, they were now able to consider the ECD teachers equally as equal partners. And we all know how important, in fact, the ECE is the foundation, is the bedrock of the education in the Gambia. And this is one of the, in fact, one of the challenges we face as a country and we face as a ministry, that our educational learning foundation is really very poor. So government is trying to obviously address all these issues by ensuring that ECE teachers are equally given the equal opportunity. They are equally being employed by government, and obviously they are also trying to look at the in-service and the pre-service opportunities in terms of training, because that is also another barrier we have or we face as a country and as a ministry. Because at the level of degree, in the Gambia, there is no obviously formal degree for the ECED teachers. If they obviously want to advance from the certificate level, obviously there is always a stock. They either have to leave altogether to other cadres of teaching than stay with the ECED, because there is no degree profession at that level. But the University of the Gambia, together with the ministry, is really considering all this to make sure that this is professional opportunity is also equally extended to the ECED workforce, which obviously makes the stream and the flow of people with the skills, with the knowledge to continue in the ECD landscape. These are things that obviously we are doing together with the government, and equally previously to before the diagnostic, the ECED are not equally also part of the Gambia Teachers Union. The Gambia Teachers Union is the main umbrella of teachers, which obviously try to address major issues, cutting issues that cut across different teachers. So, and this impact was heavily felt during the COVID-19, where most of the ECE teachers were laid off and they were not compensated. And this obviously really was very bad for most of them with their families. They struggle, and this simply because they were not belonging to a professional association. But with this, we were able to make sure that they are now considered and they are now joining the Gambia Teachers Union, so that when such a thing, obviously the Teachers Union will be able to obviously speak on their behalf. So these are obviously things that the diagnostic really help the Gambia to obviously boost and try to address some of these challenges in our context in the Gambia. Thank you so very much.
Thank you also to both of you. I think again, another example of how data-driven advocacy can really make a difference, but most importantly, that we are talking with the right people. So the messenger and the message has to be very clear. But on the other hand, it's how strategic we are addressing the change we want to make. And that has been so well proven in Gambia. There's a long road to go. And whenever we are talking about workforce, I have the feeling that there's always a lot of work to do. And the shortages in different aspects of the professional life of the early childhood educators are varying across the regions and countries. But high professionalization is something that we are staying so strongly committed to, as we really believe it depends greatly on the quality of the learning that environment that is provided to children. Thank you so much for colleagues in African Network, which so eloquently, I would say, proved how important the data it is to drive change. And we will move now to our colleagues in the Arab region. At the Arab Network for Early Childhood Development. And I will invite Mohammad Al-Bekai, regional coordinator of the network, to give an overview of the efforts that have been carried out in a hardly, I would say, challenging environment, and also to the colleague that has led the part of the research that brought evidence, as these two regions focus primarily on bringing evidence to create change. Mohammad, the floor is yours.
Thank you, Mel, and thank you everyone for being here today. I will be briefly introducing our network and how we approach the workforce issues. And then as Mel, you mentioned, I will give it back to my colleague, Dr. Karim, to present data on the research that has been conducted. So for us at the Arab Network, workforce is one main pillar out of 5 intervention areas that the ANECD works on. And we address these intervention areas and the workforce mainly through 3 working approaches. The first one is knowledge production, which is mainly through conducting context-relevant research that responds to the arising issues in the field and fills the knowledge gap at the same time. The second working approach is partnership and advocacy, which occur through networking with global initiatives like the Workforce Initiative and partners, which itself opens opportunity for advocacy for global trends related to the workforce and for shared learning and knowledge exchange. On another level, ANECD extends its networking to the national level as well, especially with national ECD networks that we facilitated their establishment. These national networks are multi-sectoral and multidisciplinary, which connects government bodies, international and national NGOs, academic institutions, experts, and researchers under one umbrella. These national networks help and facilitate reaching our third approach, which is policy intervention and impact. As our goal is to see the knowledge produced and the established partnerships and the implemented advocacy efforts are reflected in policy programs, in policies and systematic change. Under this project, we have addressed the issue of workforce professional development through two main activities. The first one is conducted a regional participatory strategic research, which investigated the professional development needs and opportunities for the workforce, namely the early childhood educators in nurseries and kindergartens. Prior to this research, we have conducted a similar analysis on the working conditions of the workforce. And our plan is to continue this mapping to the other dimensions of the workforce issues. This process was mainly inspired by the landscape analysis series that the Workforce Initiative has launched with the home visiting workforce. I want to stress on how important was in this project for us, the 4 regional networks, to work together collaboratively on shared themes and critical issues, because these networks represent over 130 countries all over the world, and they are built on foundation of diverse experiences and rich histories, which allow them to understand and the unique context of each region. And what we are presenting today is a concrete example of how this collaboration could lead to a global momentum on the workforce as one theme, and it could be applied on other themes as well, because it was an opportunity for knowledge exchange and strategic planning and collaboration to address global issues. While at the same time, each network has its own set of priorities and intervention, but together we were able to generate a significant and unified momentum toward professionalization and well-being of the workforce. For example, for us at the Arab Network, we have prioritized advocating for the rights of the workforce, especially in the context of polycrisis and multidimensional crisis that our region is facing recently and during the past years. Especially that these crises are no longer only impacting children and parents, but it's affecting the childhood ecosystem overall on all its components. And the second activity under this project that we are implementing is a training of regional training of trainers on the essential scientific knowledge for early childhood development. We will conduct a regional training for six or 7 countries, training of trainers, and these trainers will extend on a course for 7 days, a full course on the scientific knowledge on young children, and these trainers will extend the acquired training to their national countries, the national networks, and the workforce. Now I will give it to Dr. Garin Kalstian, who is the lead researcher who conducted the regional research on the professional development needs and opportunities for the workforce, to have insights on the study itself. Thank you, Mael, and thank you, everyone. Garin, over to you.
Thank you. Hello, everyone. I think Mohammed did a very nice intro and transition into the study that was conducted. I will at some point just share a couple of slides, but I would like to just start off by kind of talking through or walking through what we did. I think under the given circumstances in the region, conducting such a large-scale study with 7 countries involved took a great effort from all the countries, for which I just wanted to send an acknowledgement and appreciation for all the support they've provided to contribute to a better understanding of what's happening within the professional development landscape in early childhood in these 7 countries. So just to start off with, to highlight that the 7 countries we're working with together are Egypt, Jordan, Lebanon, Morocco, Oman, Palestine, and Tunisia. And of course, with all the ongoing crises, data is coming in intermittently, and we're trying to consolidate data as it comes in to get a sense of what this professional development landscape for early childhood looks like. So our methodology for this study was involved the focus group discussions in each of the countries that the country teams were leading on. The surveys were developed together, trainings were conducted, and then they disseminated the focus group discussions at country level. And the other thing that was done also by each of the countries was documenting or writing country level report on the state of early childhood and professional development overall. And along with that, also, we did a scoping review of professional development programs that are considered successful within the MENA region. And of course, we had frameworks that we also delved into to better understand what is there and how those frameworks can better inform how we provide or how we develop professional development sessions and programs, and how we assess the effectiveness of these professional development programs, because we know that the early childhood workforce does not often get the recognition, the attention. Sometimes it just happens in passing, sometimes it's more intentional. And there's also this division between the nursery age range with the birth to 3, and then the KGs. So those 2 groups are also, in terms of the educators, given different types of professional development, if at all. So some of the highlights from the reports, the main themes that came up was, and our colleagues have mentioned it throughout, with the first group, with the social and emotional well-being, with all this crisis, adults, caregivers, teachers are not doing well. And it's not clear how well the professional development is actually tending to the well-being of the professional workforce in order to be able to tend to the children. We also identified themes of the social, educational, and political landscapes changing, where we can see that there is more need, there is more demand now because of increased awareness on the benefits of early enrollment, on children's cognitive, social, and emotional development. Countries are prioritizing early childhood from the economic prosperity perspective or economic growth perspective. So mothers are working a lot more. So we can see that there is this demand. However, in terms of enrollment for the into the early years, there is it's disproportionate in terms of the demand and the enrollment in a lot of these countries. And some of the things that came up was in some places, the cultural taboos. There's the SES discrepancies, the socioeconomic discrepancies, the fact that the earliest years are not obligatory, so not a lot of people send them, and then the discrepancy between the rural and the urban areas, and hence the quality of the types of services that exist. The other thing that came up was the systems level structures. So overall, there isn't a holistic approach to early childhood. So you see these different ministries tending to different age groups, providing different kinds of services, but you don't see continuity across all these different ministries to give it a more holistic approach to how policies are informed for early childhood. And for the early childhood workforce also was another theme that came up, that, and I just mentioned it briefly earlier, that the nursery versus the KG early childhood workforce do not get the same types of services. So the earlier years are not systematic. It's more kind of if the directors of the center want to do that, they can promote it. Whereas in the KG, the older 3 and up have more systems in place, or more structured systems in place, although not systematic either. And so with the focus group discussions, what we found, in as much as information as we have received so far, was this really teachers do not feel like professional development is useful or helpful. They don't feel that they get the practical strategies they need in order to be able to provide for the children. And so there's a lot of, why do we do it in the first place? And there's not a lot of support for those. So we can see that there's a lack of professional development. There's a lack of follow-up on what happens with these professional development programs. There are no sustainable professional development plans for early childhood workforce within the countries. And generally, while there are initiatives, there is interest in the early childhood. On the other hand, the professional development is not really being tended to. Now, what we wanted to do was really give ourselves some kind of a framework to work within, in terms of what and how are professional development programs considered effective. So we did look into 3 different frameworks that pretty much are similar, in that when you're looking at effectiveness of professional development programs, we have to focus on the who, the what, and the how. So it's really the more qualitative, relational aspect, the engagement, as opposed to just skills and knowledge. So using some of these frameworks, we will to kind of combine or see how these professional development development programs can actually be further developed and improved within the context of the 7 countries that we worked with. And we did identify specific opportunities in each of the countries that could further advocate the need for better professional development programs and more effective programs. So in Oman, for example, the Ministry of Education wants to recruit qualified early childhood education practitioners into the early childhood education institutions. So there is a place for professional development to actually effectively be implemented. In Jordan, we found that the Ministry of Education, actually, there was a decree that was issued to establish a new ministry called the Ministry of Education and Human Resource Development that handles all the professional development programs, etc., in order to address this fragmentation of the early childhood landscape. So giving it a more holistic approach. In Tunisia, there is the move toward increased enrollment for the vulnerable students for all early childhood levels. So again, all these are great opportunities. There is the initiatives that are being set by governments to be able to improve the early childhood landscape. So the professional development lands pretty well into this scene. And I'm probably over, but just quickly to talk about the next step. we're consolidating all the remaining data from the countries. We're going to organize workshops to present the findings in the countries and develop the recommendations together in order to disseminate the report. That's it. Thank you very much.
Thank you. I think everybody's appreciative for the entire work that has been done. As I was saying, we know that the conditions in which this research has been carried out have been very challenging. And for this reason, we highly appreciate the commitment to continuing the work and to pursue the I would say, mission that the network has in keeping the country networks, the mobilizing and maintaining, let's say, the commitment that they also have for providing quality services for young children. It's a how to say, very hard to talk about early childhood in some of the countries that you have mentioned, and it's very hard to keep, the people's mobilization of efforts and hopes for what can be built in something that is continuing being compromised. So I think it's really a huge appreciation for all the work that you have been doing. And we are so glad to see that there are developments, and the whole work of evidence building, I think it's so strong in both continents that have spoken about it, as there is such a strong need for putting data, to put numbers, but also to put data, to put information that comes from the grassroots, that is really speaking on behalf of those of children, but also on behalf of the caregivers and on behalf of the workforce. Unless this is not really known and is not becoming the foundation for relevant policymaking and for moving ahead, what a more systemic change has to happen, then it would be very hard to really make meaningful steps ahead. So congratulations again. Actually, the congratulations go for all colleagues that have presented. I think that they have tried to landmark a bit the territory of the power of mobilizing regionally and at country level partnerships that are so meaningful, and they are really driving those types of measures or those types of capacity building, changing mindsets and behaviors that are so meaningful, as we have heard, because they reflect a need that is there. And it also reflects the priorities that we have learned about the need for the workforce to be recognized, to be supported, and to be empowered. I will ask now for our second panel discussion, while inviting everybody to put questions or comments in the chat box, and we will relate to them as soon as we will see them. I will ask my colleagues that have graciously responded positive to our invitation to be part of the second panel discussion to put their cameras on. So Jennifer, if you don't mind, we can put the slide with the panel discussion number 2. I hope that everybody has enjoyed so far all the results that have been presented across the region, and it might not be surprising that there are needs or priorities that are very similar, or problems or challenges that are very similar across regions, which shows that it's so symptomatic that the workforce really needs focused attention from those stakeholders that can make a difference. And we hope that we as regional networks are amongst those that are driving this movement in favor of the early childhood workforce. So unfortunately, one of the panels did not make it, but we are very happy that we have others that are with us. So the panel discussion is now focusing primarily on, we have learned of what has been done and the priorities that have been identified by the networks. There might be many other priorities that we have not been aware of, or from the positions that the institutions that I are representing on the international landscape, they might have learned about them. And we would like to see, so we represent a platform, yes? So the 4 networks came together into a global initiative that serves as a platform for tackling meaningfully those challenges that are still on our agenda globally, regionally, and at country level regarding the early childhood workforce. What are those priorities and how they see this initiative, this cross-regional initiative, as being in that position of driving such kind of cross-regional cooperation? Because we learned about the strategic partnerships, and if we look at the system at the global level in its complexity, partnerships, coordination, collaboration between those that can make a difference from representing their institutions, leading to system level changes. So I'm very glad to have with us Vidur Chopra, the ECD specialist at the regional office of UNICEF for Europe and Central Asia, Kunyang Christy Bang from the UNESCO regional office in Bangkok, and Professor Hasina Banu Ibrahim from UNESCO co-chair in ECD and convener of the Knowledge Generation Working Group at the African Union. We will also have a short video from Jane West, who's represented the Two Lilies Foundation, also one of the donors that has been quite strongly and dedicatedly engaged on the issue of workforce globally. So, looking at the questions, I'm inviting now our panelists to express their views. So whomever would like to start, I don't know. Vidur, would you be willing to start the discussion? You've been a strong supporter of the work that we have done regionally. And now that you have heard what happened also in other regions, and looking at the achievements that not only in our region has happened, what is your understanding? So what are other priorities that we could address, and how you see that this mechanism of expertise that is put into place and of expertise and networking capacities that we have to advance the work on the workforce?
Great. Thank you, Mihaela, and congratulations to all the network leads as well as the country representatives for a really rich conversation. Mihaela, I mean, these questions are really big questions, so I don't think I can do justice to it, but I'm going to try to the best I can. I think for the region that I'm situated in and in Europe and Central Asia, I think one of the things that we're seeing is that this is an aging workforce, and the workforce is not replenishing as quickly as it is aging, which tells us that there is a fundamental problem in the pipeline, to speak. And I think the presentations on professionalization remain critical and key, and as relevant to this region as to other regions as well. Data remains a very sort of critical barrier, as well as sort of this tiered differentiation between educators and professionals who are taking care of under 3-year-olds versus those who are sort of attending to the preschool age. So I think that's one where we're really staring at this crisis in the workforce. It's a broader crisis in education that we're seeing, and I think we need much more concerted efforts and stronger advocacy with governments, with different ministries, and I think a louder call to action and really sort of coming together across networks is necessary. So I think while we contextualize approaches based on what is the realities and what is relevant for every region, but I think there needs to be a louder sort of clairvoyant call for action in this area. Otherwise, we really risk sort of missing out on the opportunity. I think as the workforce is aging, the other piece that we're seeing is that there's tremendous pressure on our in-service systems, particularly. And so we know that these in-service systems have not always kept up with times, with the latest evidence. And I think more importantly, with the science of how adults develop and learn, and what are best practices in enabling adult learning. I think we can't use the same sort of sets of principles that we apply for how children learn versus how adults learn. And so we need to be able to integrate and speak that language better and in a more sort of coherent, cohesive way. And I think the other part is that we really need this shift that, and I think the work that ISSA has undertaken on psychological first aid has so beautifully modeled that, of moving away of our systems, not just thinking about in-service professional development, but really continuous professional development. And what does that look like? Now, having said that, I think there also needs to be more evidence that we need on what are good models of continuous professional development, right? And what is out there? How do we take stock? And also, how much does it cost? Because I think that is the big question that governments are also asking in an era where fiscal space is increasingly shrinking, particularly at this moment in time, given all the sorts of global uncertainties that we are confronted with. And I think regional networks play a really important role in being able to bring academia into the fold and being able to sort of build on that evidence and really build out a full sort of research agenda that can speak to these big policy questions of what are these models, how much do they cost, how quickly can we scale them, etc. And I think one of the things that we need to recognize also that we've seen from the work around psychological first aid is that I think we look at our distribution of workforce, right? Or people who sort of show up to different sorts of professional development initiatives. We're going to have people on either ends of that distribution, and the professionals at one side, we're going to have the professionals who are very enthusiastic, who are eager and keen, and who are going to pick it up very quickly, and who are going to try and all possible solutions really to improve their practice because they're so deeply intrinsically motivated and committed to the work that they're doing. On the other hand, we're also going to have professionals who might be resistant to change for lots of different reasons. And that's a reality we have to contend with. Like, there isn't a model that is going to work for everyone, but there is a large swath of professionals right in the middle who want to do good, and who need a little bit of support to do it better. And I think that is where we really need to sort of also think about what are the interventions that can target that middle sort of layer. And I think back to your point that you raised is that we have to think about a broader enabling environment. So our leaders, because the professional development that works for educators and professionals may not necessarily be the same that leaders are asking for. And they're the ones who are creating the enabling environment for educators to be able to engage in professional development. And I think finally to this question of what are we seeing in the region, what are educators asking for? And I think one of the really interesting things in a positive way that our educators and professionals are forcing us to break away from our sectoral silos, because they are really our unsung heroes. And I think day in and day out, they are working with children, with families. They're seeing so much more of what's going on the ground, and they have a better sense of what's going on behind the scenes that policymakers and decision makers don't, right? And I think what they're really asking for is for us to reconsider this package of support, right? So it's not just about early childhood education and care, but a broader ecosystem of child development. And so we know that, I mean, our time and time again, this question comes up of how do we engage families? How can we support parents through early childhood education and care programs, recognizing that families and parents are also facing enormous challenges right now. But as an educator, what can I do to support parents of young children? So I think that's a key piece that keeps coming around family engagement, how to do it well. Another piece is around early childhood intervention. How do we support early childhood education and care professionals to be part of broader transdisciplinary teams as we think about children with developmental delays and disabilities, and how do we create sort of really natural supports for children in natural environments to help them progress. And I think the other piece is around outcomes orientation. So educators can see progress, or even regression sometimes, or plateauing in developmental outcomes, but I think we need to be able to provide them with concrete, really practical tools of, in your pedagogy, what is it that you can do to be able to influence and change this. And I think as concrete as practical we can be, I think that is really critical to be able to actually influence changes in both mindset and in practice. And those are not the two sets of same outcomes. I think we have to recognize that there's a change in mindset. Sometimes change in mindsets do not always translate into change in behaviors. And so we need to be able to bring in more on the science of behavioral change to also bear fruit on our interventions.
Thank you so much, Vidor. I think I'm curious to hear what are the perspectives of our colleagues from the other regions, and I will invite Christy or Hasina to reflect on what you have said as a reaction, but also perhaps additions to what you have said, or perhaps not necessarily agreeing to everything that you have said. That's also possible. So I'm just I would invite who would like to start.
Thank
Christy?
you, Mihaela.
Yes.
Yeah,
Go
thank
ahead.
you. No, I can agree more with what Vidor was saying and what panelists in the session one was mentioning.
If you look at the recent data across the Asia Pacific region, I mean, there is a severe shortage of trained ECC teachers with a high pupil to teacher ratio in some of the countries. If you look at the countries in South Asia, some teachers has to manage more than 50 children in their classroom. It's really difficult to deliver the quality education for them. And also many professionals also face low status, as many of you already mentioned, job insecurity, poor working condition, and limited access to professional development, which diminish the education quality. So I can see there are a few priorities emerging, which I mean, a lot of speakers already mentioned, but I would like to reiterate. One is the professionalization of the ECC workforce, ensuring educators are well-trained, supported, and recognized. Many regions are working to develop clear qualification standards and clear career pathways, because teachers in the ECC sector, they don't see the career pathway they can grow, and that's one of the reasons, you know, people are motivated to stay and do their job, but then they cannot see this career pathways for them. So, for example, UNESCO, we've been working to develop Southeast Asian guidelines and ECC teacher competency framework to support this effort. And we also see some of the countries in the region, such as Laos, Cambodia, Bhutan, upgrading and establishing their BA courses on ECC to really, you know, professionalize ECCE workforce. Like Vidor mentioned, leadership training is very important, because we did teacher training on different topics, but then if the leadership of the school system or the government is not convinced, it's not going to happen. So only training the teacher wouldn't make sense unless we, you know, train the leadership. And also transition between pre-primary and primary is still, there's a huge gap. We need to have a program where the teachers from pre-primary and primary can dialogue and have sharing the pedagogical practice, so that the play-based learning that we've been, you know, promoting can continue in the early primary level. Another priority is, I mean, already mentioned by Evelyn and many others, it's well-being of the workforce. Many ECC professionals experience burnout due to low pay, poor working condition, high job demand. Nowadays, the parents are demanding a lot to the workforce. So dealing with all this situation, they have high stress and burnout. So integrating this mental health support and work-life balance initiative is very essential. That's why we've been working together with ARNEC on social emotional learning competencies. And we will continue to support ECC professionals to build their social emotional competencies in the region. And then why I think it's been popular in the region, because it gives the practical tips and exercise that they can actually use in their classroom on their own daily setting. So I think it would be helpful. And finally, I see inclusive education and digital literacy and competencies are also emerging priority for ECC workforce. Unfortunately, we see the data that not many ECC workforce are trained on digital literacy or digital competency to, you know, integrate the digital tools in their teaching. I think it's becoming inevitable that, you know, we have to incorporate digital tools in our teaching practices, but then there's very lack of training opportunities for them. And also there is a growing need for ECC educators to support children with diverse needs, particularly in emergency situations due to the conflict and natural disasters. But then teachers are not trained on the topic of climate change, how to deliver the psychosocial support to the children. So I think there needs to be more training on this area. So these are some of the priorities area that I'm seeing kind of overlapping with other speakers, but then, yeah, I want to reiterate that.
Thank you so much, Christian. Now I will invite Professor Hasina Ibrahim Banu to say what is your view from the regional perspective, but not only. I know that your scope of work is beyond the region. So,
no, thank you very much for that. It's quite nice now to come towards the end and sort of knit something together that you know, would help us to go forward a little bit. So in my analysis from what has been said and what has been presented, I'm thinking that, where the network started off in terms of the Global Workforce Initiative is now catapulting into another era of what I would term a network of solidarity. And in this network of solidarity, I think that the framing idea here is around the issue of justice. When we work with the early childhood sector, it is manned by a cadre of women who experience multiple jeopardies. And what I didn't hear enough of is the gender inequities women face when they enter the labor market and offer their nurturance for labor. So I think that's very important for us to do an analysis of, this kind of justice perspectives, from the gender justice perspective, from the social perspective, social injustices, looking at the economic injustices, and of course the knowledge injustice of people that are disenfranchised. And so women's work, paid and unpaid labor within the professionalization of the workforce is a key issue, I think, that we should take on board. And the advocacy strand should be looked upon in terms of how does this fit in with our ideas around this being public good? And how does it fit in within the idea of social responsibilities? Because we've heard quite a bit about the split system in terms of the formal pre-primary, and then you've got the rest, which are in the informal, voluntary, and so forth. So the fragmentation actually produces what I term a broken workforce. And so you've got multiple vulnerabilities, for example, pre-COVID, and you've got the addition of the COVID and the post-pandemic era with its remnants and the polit crisis that creates now the brokenness to an extent that the healing is absolutely necessary. And I can really appreciate the focus on the trauma aspects and trauma-informed teaching, not just for the children, but for their caregivers and the workforce. The other thing that is really important, I think, is that in the professionalization, equal work for equal pay, around everything around the conditions and what have you. Because if you look at the salary, in South Africa, for example, they get between 1,000 to 3,000. It's not enough for the individual, and then this individual now has to cater for the families. And benefits for the workforce is minimal or non-existent. So I think these are real issues to pick up with. And in looking at the career path, which was mentioned, if a country has a national curriculum qualifications framework, where does the early childhood workforce appear on this framework? Or if they don't have this framework, where are the early childhood people? Where's the visibility? And so we find that it starts off from degrees and diplomas and degrees and whatever, but most of our people are on the skills courses, or they are on the certificate courses. How do you bring the non-traditional learners into a system where they would experience the equities that others experience in more established sectors of the education system? And then the thing that we find quite strong also is the deep fragmentation brought about by a siloed effect of different categories of workforce. So you've got health, you've got the social workers, and you've got the early learning workforce. In terms of the work they do, what are the core competencies that the workforce, everybody needs? What is the core competency? I mean, we could, enable a good Delphi study to find that. And there was something that was done, but it needs to be deepened with the context realities that are facing And then looking at actually the specialization. So you know that if you're in early childhood, it's non-negotiable that you should know all these things here. And if you're a specialist in early learning, then these are the kinds of things that need to come on board. So the core and the specialization. The last point that I want to make is the importance of the social compact. What is the social compact for the workforce? And who needs to come together in what capacity, under what conditions, and what do they have to offer for this kind of what I'm terming now as the global network of solidarity for the early childhood workforce. And I won't dwell on the other things because I think they've been covered quite a bit. Thank you.
Wow, this was really so inspiring in all three contributions. I think that our agenda is growing. I'm not surprised, I would say. I also agree. I mean, I love this idea of global network for solidarity for workforce, and maybe we should rename our initiative and call it that way. Because I strongly believe that bringing together so many types of stakeholders in dialogue and agreeing on what are the priorities. And I also agree with Vidur was writing in the chat that there may be too many and there might be too hard at a certain point to add to the complexity rather than trying to really tackle those things that are unlocking more potential than rather putting barriers in our work, because it is a very complex issue. I noted many of the contributions in these answers that relate to emerging priorities. And there was mentioned that also I have to honor some of the questions that came before the meeting. How do we tackle the issue of shortage that you mentioned, Vidur? And it is a growing issue, as well as the shortage of qualified professionals. So both of them, I mean, we are, and adding to what Hasina Ibrahimov just mentioned, a feminized workforce. But we know all these things. So it's like there are only if we put all these three on the table, there's already a lot of work to do. And that requires, on one side, the perspective that was brought with the Network for Solidarity, but also what Vidur was mentioning, perhaps to be more vocal. And I'm wondering if such type of initiatives, this cross-regional, I hope that everybody understood what wealth of expertise, what wealth of partnerships, how strong the impact of a collaborative initiative can be. Only if we look at the number of countries that have been involved and have made in 1 year significant steps ahead, how such a cooperative, collaborative initiative can really determine if we would pursue and we would be louder and we would be stronger in terms of the partnerships that we are trying to, we're bringing, let's say, in this endeavor. I'm mindful of the time also. I monitored the chat and I have not necessarily seen any question coming in, but there is now a bit of time if anybody wants to share a reflection or a comment based on what has been shared by all networks and also by our esteemed colleagues that are representing regional organizations, very active in their own regions, actually. Is there any hand up? Would anybody want to share any reflection, even on the questions that have been already addressed by our speakers? If there is any addition or something that they would like to emphasize. There's a lot of shyness or reflective pause. It can be both. Well, maybe you will be shy in speaking, but then we will invite you to a Mentimeter so that you can share in writing at least some of your reflections, at least to understand how you have related to everything that has been presented or shared, I would say, by all the esteemed panelists that we have had today. I will ask Jen, if possible, to put up the Mentimeter. And we will kindly invite you to click on either to use the QR code or to use the website www.menti.com. You might be familiar already with it, and then insert the code that has been provided on the screen, which way you feel more comfortable. So you just join the link or you use the QR code. And now we will go to the questions. We have 3 questions for you. Hopefully you will manage to go through all of them. I hope that that will be possible. Jennifer, can you put now the Menti up? So you will see, based on what was just shared today, how meaningful have you found the work done so far? We trust on your honesty. It was inspiring, very powerful, and more could be done with more funding. It's very true. Well, actually, I think it is a proof that that's one of the, I would say, variable that matters a lot in putting in motion such a powerful movement of solidarity. I will quote again, because I really find it inspiring. Very true. Teachers across Asia are frustrated that their valuable work is not seen professionally. Well, that could be also an avenue for, and it might be a long journey to get to address the shortage by having professionals that are valued, that are well remunerated, and I would say the professionals that are cared for. So that could also be helpful in bringing a new image of the profession that is not broken. So that means across age groups. And I very much agree with the demand for having a common ground mindset, understanding, perception of those that are working in the early childhood field, no matter the sector. Very insightful, interesting to listen to best practices and evidence across various regions. Thank you so much. Can we move the screen if I think that there are more answers? Yes. Great cross-regional learning, very true. It was amazing work. It's very true. When you listen of everything that has been done, it is indeed impressive, I would say, but also gives hopes that there's so much that we can do together. It is very powerful, I would say. Can we move to the next question? Now, from where you sit in the organizations that you represent, the role that you're having, do you see a role for this initiative in your work? Yes, that's great. If anybody can expand, and we would be grateful to understand a bit more. As we mentioned at the beginning, it's a kind invitation to all of you to go to the website of the initiative, because in the Knowledge Hub, there's a wealth of knowledge, a lot of tools and studies and policies, of different categories of resources that can be quite inspiring. There are lots of research, so evidence that is brought to different aspects related to workforce. So it's a huge opportunity to whenever you think about issues related to workforce, to first visit that place, and it might bring a lot of answers. And again, if there are things that you would like to learn more, or you would like to share resources that can be uploaded on the website because they would be relevant, focusing on early childhood workforce, we are very pleased to play the role of facilitating this dissemination or enriching our knowledge hub. It fits very well. Yes, training and professional development. Indeed, there's a lot of work happening on social emotional learning across many regions, and I was very pleased to hear that the topic of mental health, educators' well-being is growing in terms of action-oriented efforts. Yes, well, the dismantling of USAID, I think it's affecting a lot of organizations at this moment. Very true. Can we scroll down to see what other colleagues have said? Indeed, there are lots of research ideas that can be grounded in everything that has been shared today. Yes, and also continuing with what we have so far done under the initiative. And the last question, keep continuing writing because the Mentimeter will be open, so you can continue answering to the previous questions. How can you support the continuation of this initiative? This might be a more challenging one, but we are open to any ideas, as we truly believe that giving the longevity of the initiative has been crucial in continuing pursuing the main vision that we had, that we managed to determine changes, meaningful changes at country level that really aim to improve the status of the profession, the way in which professionals are supported, and improve in the end the quality of the services that are delivered for children at home, in communities, in centers, wherever they are provided. Well, we will provide also the contact so we can continue thinking together. There are so many opportunities that might be out there. And as we said, partnerships are so important. Yes, exactly. Wonderful to see all these ideas. And I think that we can continue, yes, joint fundraising. All networks are ready for that. It's so important that if we are to consider this a network of solidarity for the workforce, I think we need to involve more actors and more funders to understand the urgency of addressing the issue, not only the complexity, but prioritizing specific aspects that are symptomatic for the world we are living in, and how there is a big risk of workforce being forgotten or not properly addressing their priority needs. Indeed, research and sharing resources further in your own networks, that would be fantastic. Thank you so much. We are getting close to our meeting. And before that, as I was mentioning, that we would need to bring more funders closer to supporting our shared purpose. I'm going to invite Jen again to share one of the video, or a small video that was shared with us. Unfortunately, the hour was impossible for Jane West from Two Lilies Foundation to join online. but she did prepare a pre-recorded video. We are very grateful. As one of the donors that is supporting efforts around early childhood workforce for a long time, sharing her thoughts and also what she sees as a priority and how this issue should be shared as a concern among many other donors that are concerned with the issue of early childhood. If you are ready to share the video. Not yet, but soon.
Greetings, everyone. My name is Jane West. I'm the founder and executive director of the Two Lilies Fund. This is a global early childhood development fund that I started about a decade ago, which is around the same time frame as the start of the Early Childhood Workforce Initiative, an effort that I am so glad to know about and support. We are aligned, the work I've been doing in the decade that's just passed, and that they have been, I would say, two peas in a pod, in that my portfolio focused on what I call frontline worker well-being, which is just one part of this big initiative you're hearing about today, but this has grown substantially in importance for me. I started out in my first year supporting an amazing nonprofit in South Africa who has set high standards in well-being supports. And now my portfolio has grown to support efforts in Central America, the Middle East, and elsewhere, including a global master's program in child development. That's just to name a few. It's been on my mind, as it has been of those you've been hearing today, because I've been baffled how the needs of the adults in that key middle part of delivering the interventions so needed by families, I've been baffled that this has not been on the agenda, their needs. Of course, present company accepted. Not just that it hasn't been on the agenda, but even worse, has been ignored. So in the fall of last year, I set out to understand by surveying around 40 thought leaders to see if I was alone in this perception. I wanted to know how others in the field saw these key community members who shared backgrounds, served as trusted bridges to families. How did they see the position they held in the early childhood ecosystem? The consensus seems to be that these key implementers still are not valued financially nor psychologically for their lived experience. They're not well compensated for their vital local knowledge and not supplied with social supports that could buffer their exposure to others' trauma. And this means their chances of experiencing harm through what they witness and perhaps ending up burnt out, it means their chances are substantial of that happening. This situation matters all on its own from a human rights point of view. No one should go through this kind of suffering as an everyday part of the job. But it also matters from the point of view of theories of change, those that the early childhood world so believes in. Triggered workers, unwell workers will be highly challenged to hold a secure base for the families that need them. And this then impacts the outcomes we all hope will be strong for the families served. So the adults in the picture matter, and most specifically, their voices matter. This is an area in the thought leader survey I did that was indicated as needing to be spotlighted and improved. That is, soliciting early childhood development community worker perspectives on the content of the work, how they are doing, what supports they would want. There's so much room for growth in this area, so little that is being done yet. That is, the Early Childhood Workforce Initiative is one of the places where this has been going on, one of the few, and they've been leading the way with their voices from the field. I would love to see that work continue on, and I'm hoping we might partner going forward in the year with a Voices from the Frontline series that we can all learn from, hearing of the lived experience of those doing this work. I'm so glad to be here today on a video and would be there in person if the timing were slightly different, but thank you so much for listening.
And we also thank very much Jane for her intervention from far away, but very close to our spirit and the work that we are doing. And I appreciated, Ghassan, your sharing in the chat, and that she's been very much supporting the work that you have been doing. And I'm very happy that she ended in the note of continuing to support and trying to find ways in which we can partner to continue what we have started some years ago, the series of voices from the field. In the spirit of the network of solidarity for the workforce, I think, yes, we feel highly responsible to bring the voices from the field so that they can shape the agenda of what makes sense for them to become better at what they are doing, to feel confident and cared for and supported in the work that they are doing. I'm looking at the time, and we are right in time, and I hope that everybody has found all the interventions that have been following in the past 2 hours meaningful for their work, or they have given a good understanding of what we can do together, what we have done, and what we can do together across regions, within countries, mobilizing networks that are full of expertise. They benefit of mechanisms that perhaps are privileged comparing with other organizations, and that we have a lot that we could mobilize across the regions as well as at country level through strategic partnerships. We're looking forward to, last slide, Jen, in case that colleagues that participated in the webinar would like to stay engaged with the initiative. First of all, sign up to the newsletter if you go to the website of the newsletter, as well as you can write back to me, and we can find ways in which we can continue the discussion of how we can work to sustain the work that has been carried out so far under the initiative, as we do have a theory of change in place. And we hope that all regions with all the partners around will be able to achieve further. I'm extremely grateful, and thank you to all colleagues at the regional networks for their work over the year, but as much as the work that has been done by colleagues at the country level, thank you for participating and sharing your journey so far, your efforts, as well as all the colleagues that participated from the regions in this dialogue. I hope it was useful. I hope that brought hope, not only a list of to-do, and that it shows that there are things that we've managed to advance, and we keep staying committed to it. With thanks to all of you who stayed until the very end, and to all your answers during the little poll we have done. We look forward to having you with us in further events that will be organized by all 4 networks in driving further the change for the workforce. With huge thanks to everyone, we look forward to hearing from you.